I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the state of US Ignite. And for those of you who don't know what we are, I will describe what we're doing. And then also talk about how we're contributing to economic development and some case studies from cities that are embracing the kind of vision that Lev laid out so effectively. Might as well I'll keep going. We were set up, established at the White House about 3 years ago with help from inspiration from another visionary, Nick Maynard from OSTP, who is in the audience with us today, as well as Susie Iacono and others from National Science Foundation. We're focused on 6 sectors of the economy. Lev mentioned some of them, with a focus on developing applications that create transformative public benefit in these 6 sectors. And we are working with a public-private partnership. We are a nonprofit aimed at doing that. Our goals, 60 transformative applications. And when we say transformative applications, we don't just mean ideas. We mean scaled applications, either in the nonprofit scale meaning or in the commercialization. We talk about next generation technologies, driving applications. By next generation, we typically think of gigabit to the end user, which Glenn is going to describe in more detail in a few minutes. We talk about locavore computing or local cloud computing, and we talk about software-defined networking or network virtualization. That goes into these. Our goal is to deploy these applications across 200 community test beds. We're at about 50 right now, with a goal of getting to 200 over the next 3 years, and also to share application ideas across these communities at scale. Wide set of partners, both cities, as I mentioned, near 50 of them, R&E networks, corporate partners, and others who have joined into this movement that you have helped found. We have a pipeline, and the pipeline is aimed at creating a balanced portfolio across these 6 sectors. And Joe Kochan will describe the collaborative community exchange we've set up on our website, which is designed to connect developers with cities and cities with developers. We have about 114 of them so far, but our goal is to continue to put bets in the right place. We think there will be foundational platforms like IoT that Lev mentioned, like connected collaboration, and like virtual reality for training and educating. And those, we want to make sure we have enough bets in those areas to ensure that platforms evolve the way we'd like them to evolve. And so far, that seems to be happening. A brief highlight looking at 2014, since I promised a state of US Ignite. We had a second annual summit. This is our 3rd annual summit. Back in 2014, we launched 20 new applications at the summit. I think you'll see over 70 applications during the course of this week. And we've also added the database that I mentioned a minute ago. We've added new partners, Flint, most recently Winthrop, Minnesota. I think Mark Erickson is here from Winthrop. They just got $8 million loan to build out in the 8-city part of rural Minnesota. Jackson, Tennessee has joined us, NC Engine from Raleigh, the Research Triangle area, and Highland, Illinois as well. We have added new funding. For those of you who are depending upon us for ideas, our funding is in good shape. We have roughly a third from corporate, government, and foundation, so we're looking to maintain that mix as we go forward. And in terms of outreach, we spend a lot of time on Twitter and other social media. Jennifer Mott, who greeted you on the way in, is our marketing expert, and anything we can do to help you drive your own message nationwide, we'd love to help do that. And we will continue to do that aggressively going forward. Some people ask about what is our process for scaling? How do we take an app or an idea and get it to either scale on a nonprofit basis or commercialized? And it's a relatively straightforward process of education. No one's better at educating communities about what next generation technologies mean than Glenn Reichert. But it's education, it's connecting people together to ideas and money, it's scaling, it's deploying, and then it's publicizing what's gone on. And we do a lot of that. Let me give 2 examples. One is FitNet. You may have seen this last year at our summit in Silicon Valley. And in the case of this, it's a Bob Summers application from Blacksburg, Tennessee. He was one of the early Mozilla Ignite winners. I think in the ideation phase, Will Bark is with us today, who ran Mozilla Ignite. And an early winner there. He then, this is by way of a virtual fitness training app where the student and the teacher's wearing, or the trainer's wearing, a biometric sensor and able to monitor in real time the accuracy of the actual training on a virtual fitness basis. So early winner in Mozilla Ignite, won an Eager Award for $300,000, then also won a hackathon in Kansas City, sponsored by Google, and was paired up with the Healthy Hawks, which is, I think, a UMKC childhood diabetes effort. Then began to roll out in Blacksburg and hopefully in Kansas City. Then got $1 million of venture funding and was named last June the #1 health and fitness app on the iStore app. And then have since been offered, following around in terms of the last part of our cycle, was then offered a kind of a management 101. Since we do view our mission as taking apps to final stages, we are working with Kauffman Foundation to offer kind of a startup 101 phase, so that companies and apps, if you have an app that you'd like to move into the commercial world, let us know, because we're going to be rolling this out more broadly. But it's basically how to raise money, how to create an elevator pitch, how to set up a team, and how to launch commercially. But anyway, FitNet, Bob couldn't be here today because he's moving into 3.0 of the FitNet app and is expecting great things. I'm going to describe another one that walks around that same process circle. This is connection between USC, Microscopic Cinema, USC Cinema Arts. Richard Weinberg, if you could raise your hand back there. And the folks in Chattanooga, Ken Hayes, Jim Ingram. And I'm not sure, is Carrie here yet? Carrie Randolph, but she'll be here tomorrow. But anyway, this is and I'm going to show a video of this at the end of my presentation. It's a great case of taking the resources of a major research university, USC, and extending it to Chattanooga only because there's a gigabit connection between USC and Chattanooga. And the movie speaks for itself. But in the course of making this connection through Richard, I think Jonathan Taplin was involved. Jing Ingram introduced us to Jonathan Taplin. We became involved. We introduced Richard and the local team in Chattanooga to NSF. There's an eager funding of $300,000. It's been piloted in the STEM high school, where students in Chattanooga can manipulate the microscope 1,800 miles away and see microorganisms that are not seeable with the naked eye. And it's going to be expanded to additional cities as this scales up beyond it, taking a tip from Lev's first conclusion. But the other thing that we discovered in this process is that USC has fiber to other research areas, such as optimizing transportation and neuroscience. So not only is there a connection now between Chattanooga and Richard's lab at USC, we've engaged UT Chattanooga to connect with these other research areas, particularly in transportation and in neuroscience, so that, again, we hope to use the gigabit network to reach into local communities. And again, this is a great way to take research universities nationwide, and we hope to scale it further. By the way, on this one, if I forget to mention it, after lunch tomorrow, or before lunch tomorrow, be sure to stop by the Monroe Room on the way to lunch to see Richard's demo, because he'll be behind. It's a relatively complicated demo with a $60,000 piece of Olympus equipment, and it's hard to move around. So be sure this group ought to be in there first to see it, and I think you'll love it. As Lev mentioned also, we're focused on innovation that drives economic development. And I don't know if you noticed this, and Matt Erskine, who's the head of the Economic Development Administration, will be here tomorrow. But in the last year, EDA changed the definition of economic development. Historically, economic development has been raiding companies from nearby cities and bringing them in. This is actually one of the first governments in the world to define economic development as capacity building in your communities. Things are going to change. There's going to be restructuring. There are going to be companies going abroad and companies coming back. But the one thing a community can do to ensure stability and growth in the future is build the capacity and capabilities of its citizens to innovate. So if a restructuring occurs, move into another industry and innovate there. This is what we do best. As Lev described and others will describe throughout these 2 days, by setting up a platform with fiber infrastructure, you create the opportunity for innovation. And it's occurring, we see it every day in our communities. But it's also beginning to show up in some macro statistics. There's a great summary of these statistics in the Broadband Communities magazine back in January by Jim Baller and Joanne Hovis. And if you look at the data, companies, cities that are innovating with fiber have seen over $1 billion of growth in in-home businesses that's been quantified. You see GDP growth of over $1 billion of You see employment growth of 0.2 to 0.3% in the communities that put in fiber. You see company site selection magazine is striking communities that don't have fiber from their list. It's kind of like going to, these days, if you go to a hotel, you wouldn't think of going to a hotel that doesn't have Wi-Fi. Same thing in these communities. Increasingly, your communities require fiber to attract the businesses. Property values in fiber communities are up 5% over non-fiber communities. And again, you see this every day on a case-by-case basis. Often, I think as Blair Levin, one of our colleagues, has said, this Solow's law is that often, I think he said this back in '87, computer productivity stats are everywhere except in the aggregate statistics. So this is early results, hard to take it to the bank, but we know it's happening. And if you had any doubts, there was a Pew study last fall where 90% of experts, many of you probably were quoted in this study, predicting transformative applications between now and 2020 as a result of gigabit fiber networks in the age of gigabit. Another great article is our own Will Barkis' article on the gigabit age in TechCrunch. Check that out from last week. Let me just give you a few case studies of what's gone on. We all know about Chattanooga, we know about Kansas City, but there are 40 other cities doing similar things and learning from Chattanooga and Kansas City. This is Burlington. Stephen Barraclough, if you could raise your hand. Right here, and you'll see some common themes here of what's been happening to develop the ecosystem for creating gigabit apps. And it's usually a broad-based leadership group, in this case led by the mayor, Moreau Weinberger, made a major push behind BTV Ignite, was recently reelected with 70% of the vote for another 3-year term. It was a tricky process because of some historical financing that he was not part of. But anyway, set up a broad-based group that meets regularly. He extended the fiber with Stephen's help to all the schools and libraries throughout the city so that every school, including the universities and high schools, are connected to fiber. He's begun to set up a constant stream of entrepreneurial activities. There's a hackathon there May 1st to May 3rd at Dealer.com, which is a company that has 250 software engineers that are going to be injected into the hackathon process. And they begin coordinating with other cities. There's a planned music collaboration between Burlington and Chattanooga that's coming up very shortly. And again, sharing across. Flint Ignite, John Geske, if you could raise your hand. John is professor at Kettering University. Similar kind of thing. The mayor and the president of Kettering University have set up a group to begin to take advantage of the fiber that's in place. Many people in Flint didn't realize there was fiber in place, but once we dug in, we found that there's a 10 gigabit fiber connection connecting every school in Flint. And with that, we've set out to create 4 or 5 new applications in virtual reality. One of them is a great one, which is to simulate fracking so that students can actually get inside the mantle of the earth to figure out what happens when fracking occurs. It's going to be balanced, both positive economic news, but also potentially dangerous news underground. But with that, we've also begun to set up a link, a 10 gigabit link across the universities that are in Flint. There's Kettering, there's the University of Michigan, there's Michigan State, and there's Mott Community College, all of which will be connected. Their innovation centers will be connected, and we hope to give rise to a flurry of new application ideas. We've also connected Utah with John, who's got a Track 1 proposal in to the NSF to actually use secure, it's called CCAT, to use secure wireless technologies for mobile health applications. And then Red Wing. Neela, where are you? Neela Mulgar back there. Neela recently ran a very successful red hot hack with over 50 participants. I think there was a tender, some guy who was there who said he's from New York City. He doesn't usually get 50 attendees. So in Red Wing, Minnesota, we did. Again, it's set up as a nonprofit called Red Wing Ignite that's been set up. Very strong leadership from the top of the city, broad-based group, small business equity fund to help fund new ideas, constant stream of entrepreneurial activities at a business accelerator that's been set up. Very, very successful project. And this is going on across dozens and dozens of cities. We hope to make it even more broadly dispersed as we go forward. So what are the common themes from this effort? First and foremost, I can't emphasize enough the importance of having a broad-based accelerator team. You can call it what you want, but it's helpful to be anchored at the top. But it's also very, very important to have the local tech community involved, the university community involved, the foundation community involved if they're there, as well as members of the anchor institutions, the libraries, the museums, the schools, so that you have the broadest group of support and the greatest number of ideas coming in. Very important to involve the community anchor institutions. Be sure to come this afternoon to hear from Internet 2 and what they're doing to connect 94,000 different anchor institutions. And then finally, stimulating a constant stream of applications. Bradley Holt in the audience from BTV Code for Vermont is very active in the Burlington community, driving monthly activities involving universities and the local hacker community, and it's happening. Sharing best practices across the cities, and finally looking for sources of funding from across the nation. One of the reasons the communities are successful is that they've created a neutral umbrella for bringing together different parts of the high-tech community. Not all of the applications that are developed use the gigabit to its fullest, but in Burlington and Red Wing, in Kansas City, Chattanooga, and Flint, we're finding that having a neutral umbrella organization to bring people together breaks down barriers that have existed for many years. And by doing that, you unlock certain skills that have been locked in the University of Vermont, for example. There's 5 years of investment in 3 or 4 areas of expertise like smart systems, farm systems, neuroscience, that have been brought out or in the process of being brought out for the benefit of the whole community. We find that these kind of activities bring out small businesses. There are not a lot of large businesses yet engaged, so it's great to involve the small businesses. And it's a great way to engage multiple civic constituencies like the schools, like the libraries, like the museums. And of course, involving the maker spaces and other accelerator groups that are in place. But there are a few blocking and tackling things. You know, sometimes we stand up and we want to kind of focus on theory, but at the end of the day, to make these local groups work, which are focused on leveraging gigabit infrastructure and developing new applications, a lot of it is blocking and tackling. One of the key things we found is that it really, really, really helps to have a full-time leader, a Ken Hayes or an Aaron Deacon who wake up every morning thinking, what can I do to develop a new application to benefit this community and leverage this fiber infrastructure? It really helps to have a broad-based accelerator group anchored at the top with the mayor, president, whomever, with a broad-based representation. It really helps to have a technical resource who's dedicated to connecting, if you have a local Genie rack, connecting it to the broader anchor institutions and to the broad fiber infrastructure you have. Scheduling monthly meetings. We're about to kick off Jackson, Tennessee, or Jackson Ignite, and we've already started to schedule the monthly meetings. And meetings are forcing functions. If you have a meeting, you got to get stuff done or you are embarrassed, and that's important. Meeting spaces are real important. Having accelerator spots that are places where you can convene groups on a regular basis, call it US Ignite or whatever you want to call it, just to get people there. And then shareable applications that not only benefit the single community, but also can be shared with other cities around the country. And that's real important as we move to the scale phase. And then ongoing sources of financial support. We are finding that a good mix in local communities is not just depending upon local funding, because that's not always available, but some mix of foundation funding and corporate funding going forward. Because if you tell the story about how important what we're doing is for economic development, the foundations can be involved, and often the community foundations have not ever invested in something like this. But if you tell the story effectively, we've seen Mott Foundation has been investing in Flint, and they've seen the impact in energizing the community that doesn't happen without this kind of investment. And finally, as if to answer Lev's call, we have a proposal into National Science Foundation to connect 15 cities with a gigabit infrastructure and a locavore computing infrastructure that will make it easy, we hope, to share applications across these 15 cities. We don't know whether we've won it yet, but you'll be the first to know. It also includes funding for increasing the capacity of the ecosystems in each community, as defined in economic development, increasing the capacity and the capabilities to innovate. Our goal is not to just stop with the first 15 applications, first 15 cities, but move on to the next 15, and then the next 15, and the next 15. And this is the way we're going to scale.